announced, and he's got a list as long as you're around and the things he's done. So it was really hard to put it all in a para. Ken thought I might go longer than your speech. So, Dr. Tan, he's an adjunct professor at Bond Uni and Griffith Uni, and he's also worked on the Wall Street as a banker. He's an innovator and a futurist, and also a bit of a comedian, which is always a good thing.
Thanks, man.
He's been the founder of Bond Wireless, which was an award-winning wireless software application and services company. He's presented at TEDx and run workshops as a consultant with the South Korean government. And the list goes on and on. But we are so fortunate to have him here today because he's just got out of hospital last weekend after a 3-stent operation. So we are super fortunate that he could come along after he's recovered. And welcome, Dr. Tan.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much for having me on this early morning. Just a quick background. I mean, so I'm from Malaysia originally, but studied and worked in America for a while. I was the Asia Pacific ambassador for Singularity University in NASA AMS Research Park in Silicon Valley. And for those of you who know Rick McElhaney, who was the president of Kumara Rotary. So I've done a few talks for Rotary in Malaysia, in Kumara, and also for Parkwood. And because of COVID, I'm kind of grounded. Normally, I'll be flying around doing talks and stuff like that. And I'll just go through some of the stuff that I'm working on. And I think a particular project that I feel this club might actually have some synergy with. So, what is exponential? As you heard Andy mention this now, you know, everything is exponential. So what exactly is exponential? I mean, how many of you know what exponential actually means mathematically? Headmaster must know it, right? So, anyway, all right. So the problem is our brain is programmed to think linearly. What does that mean? So if I say I take one step, a meter a step, in 30 steps, how far would I have gone? 30 meters, right? So if I say I take an exponential step, I double my steps every time I walk. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, right? In 30 steps, how far do you think we've gone? How far? Give me a number, any number you like. Very close. You would have gone 1 billion meters, right? Or 26.5 times around the Earth, right? And this is how far some of these technologies are moving. So, at Singularity University, we are working on projects like this, right? You know, I was fortunate enough to be the first Queenslander in the program. I've lived in Australia for about 29 years now, 30 years maybe, dating myself. So we work on different projects to impact 1 billion people possibly within 10 years. This is back in 2011 when these Queensland government, kind of co-sponsored me together with NASA to work on the project on fighting corruption. And that goal, those goals are now translated into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure you guys are aware. Back in 2015, all the 192 nations in the United Nations, including North Korea, agreed that by 2030, in 15 years, they will try to achieve all the 17 goals. And essentially, it's kind of mirrored on what we were doing at Singularity back in 2011. So this is a snapshot of what's happening in the world right now, right? So essentially, in 1 minute today, this is I think January this year, people are making 1.4 million phone calls, video calls, right? Amazon is shipping about almost 7,000 packages a minute. Okay, so this is what's happening, right? Consumers are spending $1 million online a minute. Okay, this is how fast things are moving in terms of measuring how things are happening. Oops. And around the world, right? We have now almost 8 billion people in the world, right? But what's interesting is almost more than 50% of people are living in cities, which you have seen with the pandemic, it becomes a big issue, right? But it's also an opportunity, right? You're creating clusters. Great people get together and try to solve problems. We have almost over 5 billion people using mobile phones, which is a 66% penetration rate. And we have almost 5 billion people using the internet. So there's no better time than today to be an entrepreneur, right, or innovator. You have almost 5 billion people online who are your potential customers, investors, key partners, and essentially, people that basically are ready to work with you in solving some of your issues. So another way to measure how fast things are moving is how fast does a company become a unicorn, right? A unicorn is defined as a company with a valuation of over $1 billion. Harley-Davidson, right, a motorcycle company, took 86 years. IBM took 46 years. The fastest was Jet.com, a company similar to Amazon that was sold to Walmart in 4 months from zero value to $1 billion. That's the most impossible to achieve in the old days, right? I'm not saying get rich quick, but I'm showing you how things are moving so rapidly. Another way is like, how long does it take you to reach 50 million users? A telephone took 75 years, right? For those of us who remember the old dial tone and the old rotary phones. Pokemon Go, which Rick and I play often, it's 19 days. And the fastest in the world at the moment in the Western world is Chewbacca Mum, right? In 24 hours, it reached 50 million users. Obviously, in China, that's even faster, right? Because they're talking about huge population there. So I thought some of the interesting things that's happened in our world, right? So let me just put the slide first. Oops. Okay, so remember your passwords in the old days to name your dog anything? Today your pet name is actually a key reminder of your password. So you got to be careful. And this is another interesting one I'd like to show you guys, right? Before the camera was invented, basically everybody started saying they saw miracles, right? Then you got a camera, you can prove that there's no miracle, right? And then when Photoshop was invented, a number of miracles came out. So you see fake news and fake videos and so on. This is always, this is so funny, right? My wife asked me why I spoke softly in the house. I said I was afraid Mark Zuckerberg was listening. She laughed, I laughed, Alexa laughed, Siri laughed. So they are listening to you. They are. Okay, coming back to the exponential curve, right? The problem with the exponential curve is they're very deceptive. Why? You start at some small number, 0.1. You double it, what do you get? 0.2. You double that, what do you get? 0.4, right? 0.8. Under 1. So it's basically very deceptive. For example, the LED lights. They are not new. They've been here for more than, maybe 15, 20 years now. But it was too expensive. At Singularity, we basically teach people to look at the future of technology. What would the price of LED lights be in the future? Because if you know that in 10 years' time, the price is going to be so cheap, it's going to replace incandescent lamp. You can start designing stuff. LEDs on your t-shirts, LED. You've seen now LED everywhere, right? Your Christmas lights and so on. So people get disappointed. So for example, 3D printing. It's been around since the 80s. And nothing really interesting has happened, right? It's plastic stuff and we've seen it all. We've seen a few plastic guns. Not a big deal, right? Dangerous. But the technology, the patent for that technology has expired 2 years ago. So now you're going to see some really interesting stuff coming out. 3D printing of metal products, right? So the thing is that once you hit 1, in 30 steps, I told you it goes to 1 billion. That's why things accelerate so fast. So if we are at the knee of the curve at 1, you need to find out what technology is at this point. Because whether you're investing or you're planning for your future, try and ride on the curve of the exponential technologies. So another example is sequencing your gene. This is the Human Genome Project back in 2000. It was a 10-year project. And basically sequencing your gene cost almost $1 billion, human gene, right? The whole human genetic map. But this Moore's law is basically the doubling of the computer every 18 months in speed, in terms of miniaturization of sizes and so on. That's why you see your hard drive becoming cheaper and cheaper and so on. And it's drawn linearly. It's actually an exponential curve, right? This is a log curve. But sequencing your gene has fallen faster than the Moore's law. Why is that important, sequencing your gene? Because we don't know a lot of the diseases that we have, like cancer. For example, breast cancer, there are over 2,000 different types of breast cancer, but we only have a total of about 50 plus drugs for all cancers. We don't understand how it works and so on. But by sequencing the gene, we are beginning to understand some of this stuff, and we can then find perhaps a solution for it. So this is me in Singularity University with my classmate Pablo Solomon from Uruguay. So they select every year 80 people from 80 people from over 35 countries. And we are doing the first 23andMe test. We're having a spit party. We're spitting into a test tube. You guys have done COVID tests, you know it's a similar thing, right? It's taking a swab off your cheek and getting the cells to basically sequence them. So what happened is you send it off in the box. 6 weeks later, you get an email, and you can see the genes or the genetic makeup of your family, ancestral trait, your health traits, and so on. Just a word of warning for those who haven't done it and want to do it. There were a lot of divorces after this. Suddenly you find out that your parents are not your parents, your kids are not your kids, and just a word of warning. So I will share with you my genetic result because I did it back in 2011. So I got a result for all the medical stuff, which is now no longer available unless you get a doctor prescription, because the government in infinite wisdom in America decided that you are not smart enough to understand your own data. You have to see a professional who can then interpret the information for you, right? So for example, I know that I have a higher risk of age-related macular degeneration of the eye, so I know I should get more checkups, right? Other interesting thing, being Asian, you know that if you drink alcohol, we turn red, right? There's some people here that I know, but I don't. See, I don't flush. See, I'm still fine. I wasn't drinking, but if I did, you wouldn't know, right? But other things, right? Like I just had a stent in my heart, so I know Plavix has got reduced effect on me. When I tell my GP this, they're like, oh, don't worry about it. But it is extremely important because we are being given medication that are basically prescribed to people, tested mainly in the Western world, and everybody get the same dosage, everybody get the same medication. And that's not correct, right? Because we are all different. And this is the problem that we have today, right? We don't customize, we don't personalize medication. So just to share something interesting. So like I said, I'm from Malaysia. My grandfather from my dad's side of the family is from Hainan Island. It's called the tropical Hawaii of the East, right? It's a beautiful place if you've never been there. And you can see my genetic spread, right? All the way from maybe Siberia down to New Zealand, the Asian spread. That's my dad's side, right? My maternal side of my family is basically from Fuzhou, right? So this is the southern part of China, the Fuzhou province. But this is the interesting thing, look at this. I am related to South America, to the American Indians. So I thought I should go back to being Chinese, I should go back to America, claim some Indian reservation land and open a casino. Anyway, so what has this gene sequencing brought about? It brought about pharmacogenomics, pharmacomicrobiolomics, epigenetics. What are these? These are basically prescribing medication to you according to the genetic makeup of your body, customizing it to your body, all right? Microbiomics is basically about the microbiomes, the bacteria in your gut. Right? We were taught that bacteria is bad for you, and we should sanitize everything, which we are doing now for the pandemic. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of the bacteria that does nothing, does something. It stops the bad bacteria from growing and it suppresses the genes from becoming cancerous. So when you don't have that, when you take antibiotics and stuff like that and you don't replenish it, you might need a fecal transplant. You need to get, you guys are eating? Sorry. You need to get the shit from somebody else. Seriously. All right. And epigenetics is how the environment impact your genes. So, and then the other thing that I'm building up to what I'm doing, but basically, we don't have a healthcare system today, right? We have a sick care system if you think about it. Nobody makes money if you're healthy. Yeah. If you're sick, everybody makes money, right? So there is no incentive, right? So that system does not work properly. I mean, in Australia, we had Medibank, right? It used to give all the benefits to its members. It's a non-profit. The government decided to sell it. Now it doesn't care about, the members. It cares about the shareholders, which might not be members. This is a problem that we have. So at Singularity, we did look at this problem. And one of the solutions we were looking at was the Chinese village doctor model. I'm not sure if you know, in ancient China, the doctor in the village gets paid every morning by everybody in the village if they are not sick. If they are sick, you don't pay. It's in the doctor's interest to make sure that you are healthy and you are alive so you can keep paying him, right? So other stuff is like 3D printing, this is a 3D model of me being 3D printed at Singularity and NASA. My favorite, obviously, 3D printed chocolates. And this is amazing, right? They actually took they actually took the MRI scan data and 3D printed the trachea tumor of this patient. So you can actually show the patient what is the problem that he or she is having. And I actually saw a 3D printed heart of a rat. They washed the rat's heart to get the scaffolding, injected stem cells into it, and then basically grew in a jar, and then shocked it, and it actually started bleeding 2 weeks later. And they say we don't even need a rat's heart anymore, we can 3D print the scaffolding. so that's the trachea thing. And the one thing that was really interesting at Singularity was a 3D printer in space. So basically, what happened about 2 years ago, I felt is as big as Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon. We made the first tool in space. We 3D printed a tool. They needed a spanner, right, or wrench, and basically to send it by Australia Post, cost you a bomb to the space station, right? So they sent the information and they 3D printed this. Why is such a big deal? If we can make tools in space, we can then basically use space as a lead board out to explore and perhaps colonize other planets and so on. So I wrote a book back in dating myself again, in the late 90s. So I'm one of the foremost experts at that time in application of artificial neural network AI in finance. And that's why I was selected in Singularity. We've got very few people in AI and finance. And basically, you guys know about Watson, right? The IBM machine that basically won the game of Jeopardy. And it has read over 4 million pages of medical journals. I don't know whether your doctor has time to read 100 pages, right? So that's why AI is taking over some of the stuff. It's not a Singularity company, beyond bubble. I'll skip all that. I don't think I have much time. And I did mention to Catherine about the ethics of AI. So Dr. Vishal Rana, who's here now, visiting me actually, and we basically presented a paper in Oxford just before COVID on the ethics of AI, and happy to give you a paper on that if you like. I'm going to skip that all and basically jump to the project that I'm working on. I'm sorry I don't have enough time to go through it, but some of the things that are happening in terms of technology is that we're not using the right tools for the young kids, right? Today, if the Titanic is singing, all the kids would be doing selfies, right? So, how do you deploy technology for the right thing? What do you think this guy was doing back in 1983, I think, or 84? Doing a screenshot, right? 1983, see? So I don't have time to go through this, the 4 Ds of AI, but my talks are recorded, and you go to drc10.com and have a look. But one of the things I want to talk about is the project, the type of entities or businesses that are coming up, like social enterprises, right? You guys heard about it, they do good and stuff like that. And this is what I try to do by basically investing in projects that do good, but also sustainable and profitable. So, what are the problems we have in the world, right? I mean, look at America. They have 3.5 million homeless people, and they have 18 million empty homes. Obviously, the system is not working, right? And this is, like we are wasting food, right? We're dumping food, and I was in the Kibera, which is the 3rd largest farm in the world in Kenya a few years ago. A friend of mine runs a charity out there. We're trying to feed these 250 kids in a project called Lunch Bowl. And we can't feed all of them. They shut the gates on them. They only get to eat once a week. And this is the thing, right? This is what motivates me to do what I do. And you know all the other problems, I won't go through them. So, what are the solutions? Maybe, to eliminate poverty, right? Basic income and so on is coming down. So let me skip some of this stuff on AI replacement and things like that. But, sorry, I just realized how little time we have. So the things that I do are this talk for schools, right? Because, what do we have really? Go to school, go to work, get a family, and then you pass on, right? There must be more to life than this. Like, can you leave a better footprint in terms of getting things happening? And this is something that I think most of you know what Ikigai is, the purpose, the reason for being, right? Do what you love, right? Make sure it's what the world needs. You cannot just be passionate, right? Being passionate is not going to feed you, right? It has to be what the world needs, what you've got skills for, and what you can be paid for, either in crypto or in real cash, right? So the Japanese call this a sense of purpose, Ikigai, right? So how do you find your passion? Well, basically there are 2 major ways. One is imagine when you were a kid, what do you like to do? I like to take apart all my electronic toys when I was a kid. So I started as an electrical engineer, a robotic engineer, then an investment banker. Or imagine today you're already a billionaire. What would you do to change the world today? What do you want to do to make the world a better place? Right? You might as well start doing it now. How do you acquire skills? You can go to traditional universities. So I was the associate dean at Bond University IT School. I think I'm still on the board of advisor for Southern Cross School. So basically all the universities on the Gold Coast. You can go traditional university, you can go online, Udacity and Udemy, or you can go join a startup, right? Or you can do a combination of that. There's no one single pathway now to success or to acquire skills. So what the world needs, sustainable goals. Yeah, I won't go through all this stuff, but I'm basically, I'll skip all this and I'll go straight to the talk on the project I'm working on right now, which I think, so it's something called an MTP, right? What is your massive transformative purpose? Has to be audaciously large goal. So even Rotary itself should have an MTP. Google's MTP is organizing the world's information. Coca-Cola is open happiness, right? So mine is seek, share, and apply knowledge to progress humanity, which is why I'm here this morning, right? Yeah, there's so much time you can spend, right? Time is the only limited resource you have in a world of abundance until you have a time machine. You don't have one yet, but when my future self come back, then yeah, you guys can basically waste as much time as you like. So anyway, so let me just go through the project I'm working on. So essentially what happened was about 2.5 years, 3 years ago, I went to Bangkok and I visited a very old friend of mine, and there was this guy, a beggar, a Cambodian farmer that lost his leg in a mine. And at that time, we actually nicknamed him Max Plank, because he built this plank to push himself around. He only has 1 foot, right? 1 leg. So at that time, we were making hoverboards. You know, we're thinking of making it for commercial use, so we can remote control the board and carry stuff. Because when I was in China, I noticed people using it to carry stuff. So we wanted to do that, and we thought like, well, why don't we give it to this beggar and see whether we can help him move along. You don't have a leg, it's very difficult. We put harnesses on, it's difficult. So what we did was then, we said, well, this is him, we gave him hoverboard, right? And he has no leg, right? So what we did was we actually took out the guts of this board and put it into a wheelchair. And this is how this company called Rogotech was formed in Thailand. So I'm a co-founder of this company. And essentially, I think it's a project that's passionate to you guys too, I believe. You know, 90% of the wheelchairs out there are manual. The wheelchairs that you donate are mainly manual. I mean, I think you guys have motor scooters too and all that, right? But the problem is that these wheelchairs, 50% of them are not used. Why? Because they're manual. Somebody has to push them. You know, grandpa can only push grandma for so long, then who's going to push grandpa? Still a problem. Your answer is, well, give them a motorized wheelchair. What's the problem with that? Powered wheelchairs are expensive, they are heavy, and basically not easy to access, right? So this is why we decided to create something called Abby. So our MTP is to basically have a, you know, like, oh, sorry. It's until everybody can walk, right? We basically want to, you know, the company will exist and everybody can walk, right? So we created this chair. I'll show you what it does, right? It is only 25 kilos. Batteries can be removed, can be packed away. You know, you can remove the battery. It's unlimited range from that sense of point of view, sorry. You know, it's intelligent robotics. I can use a remote control and summon it. So it is portable. It is affordable. It doesn't cost more than the cost of a top-end iPhone, 2,000 US, because we want to make it affordable. So we are looking for investors at the moment, and we are trying to get it, and we already have like a pre-order, and I think we've sold quite a bit of it. And so it's also a power, it's also a power assist chair, and you can follow a line. So imagine you're in the airport or you're at home, you're holding a baby. Press a button and it just follows a line. It wasn't difficult technology. You didn't need like all this sophisticated AI face recognition. All it is just a toy, sensor that can follow a line. All you need to do is paint the floor, and it will follow a line and can follow people, you know, within 2 meters. So essentially, this is what the product actually does. Is that a remote control, you can control them, and you know, I guess a selfish reason for doing this project is my parents are like 86 and 85, right? They don't, you know, they're not physically disabled, but they have, you know, mobility challenges, and that's why we're not making this a medical product. We're actually making this a product we're calling it a personal electric vehicle. It's what it is, right? And we want to take the stigma of people using the chair. So one of the projects we're working on right now is, this is our CEO. Let me just show you this. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Sometimes even.
So what we're working on right now, you cannot go up a curb. So we build a hydraulic to push it up.
Way around that.
that's it. Yep. Sorry, I ran out of time, but come have a look at globotech.co and there's my contact details there. And thank